Welcome everybody to this edition of Beers with Bill. Tonight, I welcome back Cam Fryer, Royal City Brewing. Welcome back, Cam.
Hey
and
there.
Dan Schmidt, the GM and Master Beer Sommelier for Royal City, is joining us tonight. Welcome, Dan, to
Hi, guys.
Beers with Bill. Now, you said before we're gonna start with the bootleg cream ale.
Yes.
So,
So bootleg's a beer that we've, I think this is the third time that we've brewed it. And it's looking like it's turning into quite the favorite in the area anyway. So it's quickly becoming something that people are asking for on a regular basis. It is we call it a pre-prohibition style cream ale. Kind of, if you don't know a lot about cream ale, it was a style of beer that was popular throughout North America, but sort of the northern states and Canada pre-prohibition. And basically it was made to compete with lager at the time. And it goes through a lot of that same processing. It usually is cold conditioned, similar to a lager, but it is made with ale yeast. So it does give it a little bit more fruitiness, and almost always you'll see cream ale with corn in the grain bill. So we use corn in this one as well. So it's just nice, light, bright, easy drinking, and not a touch of cream. So the whole cream ale thing is a bit of a misnomer. And I have seen craft examples with lactose and things like that in them, which I think, if that's what you want to do and that's fun, cool. Ours is a little bit more traditional, and like I said, so just corn, two-row malt, noble hops, and so just a nice, bright, easy drinking beer with a subtle sort of herbaceous hop character. A beer that you can have a couple of.
Actually, I just got to throw in a quick correction there for you, Mr. Schmidt. There,
all right.
But it's actually brewed with 6-row malt.
Or sorry, that's what I meant to say.
And where that project actually kind of came from, or why we went with that, was right the first time we brewed this beer. A couple of producers, actually through the Ontario Agricultural College, some local experimental fields were growing a 6-row barley variety called OAC 21. OAC 21 stands for Ontario Agricultural College, obviously part of the University of Guelph here. And this was actually a variety of 6-row barley that was crossbred back in the early part of the 20th century to become, and it actually became one of the main grains of which North American beer was made from, one of the main species of barley that went into most North American beers up until about the 60s when 2-row barley kind of took over for 6-row. So we went ahead to make this beer because we thought we were going to get some of that grain. Unfortunately, we didn't get any of that. I believe Canada Malting is still trying to grow it out west right now and produce it commercially, but we actually weren't able to get any of the initial batch of that. I believe Muddy York actually got some. They knew somebody in on that project, and they brewed a beer with it. But we actually wound up using another Canada Malt 6-row that they had. It was a heritage varietal. It's actually with a blue aileron, so the inside of the grain husk is actually blue. The kernel itself is blue, and part of the reason why they did that is that this is the similar thing for OAC 21, because the plant scientist that bred OAC 21 was a teetotaler and part of the temperance movement. And he figured that brewers would be repulsed by making beer out of blue grain, so they wouldn't want to use it for beer, and they could use it for all this other wonderful stuff. However, it wound up being pretty much perfect for brewing with in terms of the chemistry of the actual and the quality of the actual grain. So a little bit of a serendipitous thing for beer, but not so much for the scientist who created it. I can't remember his name right now, but he's really famous. I'm just blanking on it right now, at least in the area. Anyway, sorry, there's a little aside, a little kind of down the rabbit hole, but we brew it with 6-row, and the intention is that sooner or later, when we can get some that OAC 21, we will swap that one in to be the base malt for this beer.
Terry was curious as to, he says there's a lot of fresh yeastiness in this beer. He's wondering what yeast you're using and where you source your yeast.
Yeah, this one is it's a Kolsch yeast. And this one comes from Escarpment Labs. So it's Escarpment Labs main Kolsch yeast.
So Cam, it's been 7 months since you were on the show last. And a lot of things have happened. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're just kind of in a holding pattern. I think it's been Groundhog Year, Groundhog Day for us year wise. It just kind of seems like everything's just the same day, repeated. So it just feels like we've kind of been in a holding pattern for a year, I don't think we're unique in that by any means. I'm sure that's kind of how our brewers are unique in that. Any means that pretty sure that's kind of how everybody feels right about now. But yeah, things are just chugging along around our way. I mean, I don't know whether Dan's got any insight on that or feels any different, but it feels like this year just didn't really happen. We're kind of still in March 2020 right now. But
it's a very strange sort of, we're talking about it today a little bit at work, and it's the shortest feeling longest year ever. In some ways it feels like it never ends, and in some ways you just feel like it started yesterday. Kind of, I think, because not every day, but a lot of days sort of feel the same. We're packing a lot of boxes, and you do definitely miss that sort of interaction with the public that it is a big part of this business. So in a lot of ways, I agree with Cam. We're just kind of holding still, waiting to see what happens. And it does feel like you're doing the same things over and over. On that note, you can't complain too much since we, still have jobs to go to and a business to run. So.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of feeling that Groundhog Day thing with the way things are today. Dan, you're not just a general manager, you're a master beer sommelier. What's it take to get that?
Well, the short answer is that you spend a lot of time and sometimes money drinking beer. But in the long side of it, I did my beer education through a certification called Prud'homme, which is basically a Canadian beer sommelier certification. In my career on the other side of the sort of business, when I was doing restaurants and bars, I ended up for quite a while working for the beer market in Toronto. And when I started there as a server, all servers and bartenders there did Prud'homme level 1 as part of their training. And so before you could work on the floor, you had to do a beer certification. And so I did that while I was there. I had an interest in beer already, but had to do this and sort of formalized a bunch of knowledge. And I ended up staying at that company for quite a long time. So while I was there, I also did my level 2 Prud'homme and my level 3, the beer sommelier certification. And then actually right around the time my wife and I decided to move back to the KW area from Toronto, I was kind of in the process of doing my master beer sommelier certification. So I did that sort of in transition. But what it really comes down to is a lot of testing, knowledge-based stuff about beer, but also blind testing. So you do a lot of blinds. My favorite one to always tell people is for one of my exams, we had to do a blind to taste the difference between a German Helles, a Czech Pilsner, a German Pilsner, and a Kolsch. And it's a lot of fun, but it's challenging. And there's quite a lot of written and project-based components to it as well. So a lot of classroom study, but a lot of tasting beers and stuff on your own as well.
With everything that's happened over the last year, how do both of you stay grounded?
Cam, you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of it for me anyway. I think it's perspective helps and hinders in a way. There isn't really a whole lot to do other than just go to work and do what's necessary to keep the place going. So I think in a lot of ways you're just kind of it just I don't know how to describe it. There isn't really anything like the different to do than other than what needs done. So I guess it's not like there's a whole lot of lot going on. And I think that perspective, as I was saying, is good in that way, because you don't really have a lot to compare what's going on to right now. There's not a lot of other things you could be doing right now. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, very, very poorly. There isn't really a lot of other things to do right now, at least for me. So it's just kind of show up and do what needs to get done. But that being said, though, I mean, it is easy to see that, you know, we are very much in a fortunate position right now that we do have something to go to and do every day. So I think both the perspective of what looking at the business and looking at what needs to do, it helps us keep moving on, and then the perspective of knowing that, yeah, we actually are pretty fortunate that we are in a business that is operating right now, and that has been that helps as well, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question or makes sense. That I don't know. I guess that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
For me, a lot of the time, it's a lot of what Cam says too. I mean, we're lucky that we have a business to still go to every day. You know, there's a lot of people and people that, you know, friends and family too, that aren't able to do that, and have a very different lifestyle because of that right now. I mean, everyone has a different lifestyle. We don't really do anything, but we're fortunate enough that we have something to go to, and you know, something that we enjoy doing. I think so. So taking a look around every once in a while and realizing that, you know, for me personally, I'm thankful that I have a job that I can go to, that I enjoy doing what I do. And, you know, when I come home still at the end of the day, I can talk to my wife and my kids and my friends and family about what I did today and went to work. There's lots of people that are just stuck at home, and whether they're working from home or aren't working at all, I feel kind of great that I can leave my house every day and go do something, and something in beer. So
That's an excellent position to be in. Being able to leave your house.
great.
It is probably a joy for a few people right now. Which beer are we going to move on to next?
So I'm going to say that next probably makes sense to do the Earl Grey Porter. So as the bootleg is sort of a newer addition to our roster, Earl Grey's been around for a while, and it's definitely the beer that people, I would say, ask about the most when we don't have it. So we only brew it once a year. We always brew it in January. But throughout the rest of the year, the constant question by people that come in or that call is like, when are you guys making that Earl Grey Porter? And it's the same every year, but people still want you to tell them it's in January, which is funny to me every year. When it comes down to it, this is a fairly simple beer. It's a lighter porter, so I would call it English-esque porter, a little bit lighter in body. And the reason for that is we really want the Earl Grey to shine through. So we do just use Earl Grey tea, and, you know, that bergamot sort of herbaceous, little bit citrusy sort of note comes through underneath. And you get all of that, you know, that porter stuff sort of coming through in the background. So some of that sort of darker bread notes, a little bit of roastiness, but we really don't want to overpower that Earl Grey character. So that the porter notes in and of themselves are quite reserved. And so this is one of those beers too that we get a lot of requests for. People love it, and then other people, you know, it's just not their thing. If you don't like Earl Grey, you're not going to like this this beer, because it does taste quite strongly of Earl Grey. So I can also, you know, Cam can tell you a little bit of the background on this beer too. This came out of kind of a cool little collab thing that happened, I believe, through the university as well.
Yeah, actually, this one was kind of born right at the, geez, I was 2014. I guess we made the first batch of this. So this was right when Escarpment Labs was getting started out, and they had won a University of Guelph like business incubator prize. That went out to a couple of other businesses in this program, and one of them was a company called the Custom Tea Company, which doesn't exist anymore, but it did for a little bit at the time. And we hung around with the Escarpment guys, or the Eastie Boys as I call them, quite a bit. And they had suggested that we do a collab with all the people that won this award. And so we were thinking about how we could do this and what we could possibly brew with it. They suggested some Earl Grey, and figured we'd just make a porter behind it. Kind of put two quintessentially English things together. Basically the intention is just as Dan said, we really wanted to create a vehicle to let Earl Grey kind of shine through. But yeah, this was kind of very much born out of a community collab that we did with both the Escarpment and this custom tea company about 6 years ago now. Time flies. But
Hibiscus Saison came out of that as well, right?
Same day.
Yeah.
Same day, same group of things. Same time period. They are the Yeasty Boys. There's Ang Rock, there's Dickie P, and MC Nate. That's what.
That's great. That's great. Tell me, what's been the biggest challenge through the past year of COVID?
The biggest challenge for me, I think, for Royal City Brewing and what we want to achieve with our brewery, I think, has been missing the social piece of brewing. Dan kind of alluded to it earlier. I really think that, what we really strive to do is to be as in tune with the community and in tune with the beer drinkers in our area as much as we can. And we've really not been able to interact with them how we used to. Basically in person and joke and talking to people and hanging with our regulars and that and drinking beer with folks. That for me has been the oddest thing of this year. I think, walking up into our tap room on a Friday night and it's empty. There's no, it's got our packaging machine and a bunch of boxes and that's it. Right. And stuff set up to take deliveries around. I think that's been the biggest, challenge for me to try and get used to that piece of our project not being there right now. That'll come back, but right now I think that's been the biggest one for me over the last year. It's just that piece is blatantly missing.
I would agree. For me, that's a big part too. It's having the social interaction that is, first of all, enjoyable, but also kind of a touchstone for what you're doing as a business as well. When you're doing something, whether it's releasing a beer and people come in and they say, this is really great, or, maybe this isn't my favorite beer. It gives you a really great in-person and timely response to what you're doing. And you get feedback really quickly. And that's great. I feel like during the pandemic, we're a lot less flexible and a lot less, it's harder to respond to customers and to the public because we don't have that face-to-face with them. And so we're doing our best to still do those things, but you do definitely miss that interaction and that feedback sort of thing too.
Yes, I think that was the biggest change for me when kickoff closed, is not having the social interaction with the people that I had come to know and enjoy spending time with. Derek suggests that maybe you should take the Korean soccer model and put your favorite people's faces on the boxes.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Just then it feels like people are in your tap room.
Right. Yeah. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
We'll just put screens up and we can put people's faces circling through them. Might be a little weird.
I don't think Amber's allowed to have scissors, though. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
What's been the best thing that's come out of COVID?
You want to go first, Dan, or you want me to?
Sure. Well, it's hard to say best, but Cam and I were talking about this recently too, and it's interesting when you look back and think about positive things about all this, and one of the things for us that it's interesting, so that I don't think we've absorbed it all yet either, is seeing some of the let's call them deficiencies or missed opportunities that we were just kind of letting go by the wayside before this happened. Namely for us would be our online sales and home deliveries, which has now made up, obviously in this new model, a large part of our business. But it was something before that we just kind of never, we had the ability to do it. We had an online store, and it was there, but we never really pushed it. And so luckily for us, when COVID hit, we already had those things in place and we could very quickly transition to them. But seeing the response and being able to use that to connect with people has been a big thing for us. And you know, that's never going to go away. I don't think in most businesses moving forward. But for us, we've been able to see such a great response from it that I don't think we would, you know, we don't want it to go anywhere. We like being able to take that part in our hands, deliver beer to people's houses, and give them that flexibility to get our beer without having to come into the shop. So it's opened up a lot of things, a lot of facets of the business that we didn't really pay a lot of attention to before. So that's been a big positive for us.
Yeah, that I had two things, and one of them was definitely that is seeing where there are opportunities that we weren't taking. I think the other one is more of a boring kind of nuts and bolts kind of side, but it really forces us to address how well the company operates. Has what we've done. Obviously, you know, overnight we lost all business at bars and restaurants. That was a big portion of our revenue. So we took a pretty big hit right off the bat of missing revenue. And when that happens, you got to figure out where you can tighten things up. And I'm not talking in terms of like, you know, layoffs and cutting people. And I'm talking about where are we not running well, or what's squeaking right now, and what can we tighten down? So I think if there's one kind of positive from that, we were able to kind of see a second positive from it. We could kind of see where we weren't operating as efficiently as we could, or not as efficiently, but not operating well. So I think in a lot of ways that really kind of helped us. And I think as well, it's been a really stressful year from a production standpoint, with our space and with our crew. And I think it's really kind of let people really help, like, you know, character, like that kind of thing. I think in a lot of cases, a lot of the guys are feeling really good about what they've been able to accomplish this year, despite all of the hurdles that we've had, and all the difficulties. So I mean, I think if there's any kind of positive or any silver linings, I guess those would be what they are. I think kind of being able to come through adversity such as it is always can have a positive effect for people. Just out of curiosity, when things go back to normal, quote unquote, how just if you want to throw it in the chat, how many folks are still going to order beer online, whether from us or anybody really, whether this is something you guys really like and are going to keep doing? Do you think it's going to be something that carries on, or will you find yourself back in the liquor store before too much time goes by, kind of with the basket in hand, worrying about how heavy it's getting, like I usually do? Why didn't
a lot of yeses.
They get the cart?
There's a lot of yeses.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think the delivery's probably here to stay. Derek was curious.
Very cool.
How has the dynamic changed? Are people ordering more compared to like if they came into the store when you get home delivery? Or are they ordering?
I meant kind of per transaction. So like customer A, are they buying more to get delivered than they would if they just walked in on a Friday night for retail takeout? Or
yes,
you noticed? Yeah.
Rob,
go ahead, Dan. Sir.
I would just say the trends that we see is definitely, you know, if we can talk about our regular customers or things like that, they definitely order more, but maybe they don't order quite as often. So where we would have seen people stop into the tap room for a beer, maybe 3 or 4 times a week on their way home from work for a beer and a couple beers to go home, now you see them place 1 order a week or 2 orders a week. And, you know, we have no minimums. So sometimes people are just ordering a 6-pack and that, you know, that's good enough. And then sometimes people are ordering a case or 2 of beer and then we don't see them again for a little while. So I would say it's definitely reduced frequency, but higher, you know, check averages or whatever you want to call it.
Yep, exactly that. The only other thing I would add is I kind of noticed that the volume has been dropping kind of since like maybe the fall, in terms of it's still higher than, like, again, we have fewer transactions, but they're bigger transactions. But I think the size of that overall transaction has been dropping pretty steadily since fall. Not like dramatically, but it's on a downward trend, I would say. So, yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
What do you think is going to be the biggest risk you take this year?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Is all I can say about that one right now for us. There's a couple of we have a couple irons in the fire that are not we're kind of working on right now, but they'll be for us anyway. They'll be pretty dramatic. So, yeah.
I look forward to reading about them in your newsletter.
We do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We want you to read about them, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be I think it'll be pretty obvious when we can when things get a little bit further down the line.
Okay. Troy, I was curious if you saw a bump in your online sales when you release new seasonals.
We do. We also try to time a lot of that. So another thing that, has I don't want to say come to light, but we've focused on a lot more during the pandemic has been obviously online marketing. So that's our newsletter, timed with Instagram and Facebook posts and things like that. So when we roll out a new beer, we try to include it into our newsletter, and that usually we see quite a bump in sales when that newsletter goes out, and then also when those new things are released. So we're seeing that people are excited about new things, and if you tell them that you have it, then they're happy to try it out. That being said, we do see bumps too, even when we go back and talk about some of our classic beers that maybe people haven't thought about for a while. So I think releasing new beer often definitely garners some interest, but also I think people just want to be part of a conversation and sometimes want to be reminded that there are great beers out there that oh yeah, I haven't had that beer for a while. I'll grab that today, or whatever that looks like.
Speaking of your newsletter, because on Monday, I was looking at your newsletter. You guys, in honor of International Women's Day, you released a brand new beer. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, a collab, not a brand new beer.
Yeah, sure. So this is the second year we've done this beer. And we did it with the Guelph Zonta group, which is a women's group that helps women in crisis. And it's a group of mostly business women that then are part of this organization that help women in crisis. And overall at the brewery, we try to do one of these community collab things once a month, sort of to be able to work with a group within the community, and then offer a way for us to help people support them by getting their name out on a beer, and then usually part of the proceeds of that beer will go towards that group or that charity. So this time with the Zonta group, so not dissimilar from the beer we made with them last year, just some slight modifications, but it's a sort of a hazy-ish rye-based pale ale. So nice, bright, sort of citrusy, fruity hop character, that sort of spicy rye character. Nice and hazy, not crazy orange juice, but hazy, what all the cool kids are drinking these days. And refreshing, fruity, thirst quenching. And we try to obviously make beers for these collabs that are somewhat appropriate for the group, and then also that are obviously going to sell well, that we'd like to give these groups as quick of and as much of a sale as possible. So it's available now until it sells out, and they're usually around for between a month and a month and a half until they sell it.
Yeah, the community collab series that we've been doing, been going for about probably 3 years now, and just kind of as Dan said, I really like this, as it gives us an ability to kind of shine a light on another organization within our community. I think that they are a really good way for awareness to be spread of a lot of the groups in our community that are doing a really good job and doing really good things for the folks for the folks in the region. Not just in Guelph, also in KW. We've worked with a couple from KW as well. Yeah, we donate 50 cents from the sale of every can directly to the organization, and hopefully they can get a little bit more awareness of what they do, the work that they do through our donation and through the collaboration. It's been a little bit disappointing the last year because we usually have the groups in to brew with us when we're making the beer, but we haven't been able to do that for a year either. So again, that's something else I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing change again, so we can actually get to know the groups a little bit better and get to know the people of the groups a little bit better when we're in there working with them, rather than just sharing a couple of social media posts, and then unfortunately that's all we can do right now. But yeah, this is something that we've done for a number of years now, and we're gonna keep going with every year. So every month we try to release something.
I'm going to say, I remember from our last chat that community is really important to you and to Royal City.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a very strong believer in that. We don't exist unless the people we are with are happy and doing and want us to be there. And I think it's a two-way street. So if we expect this community to support us, we need to be back there supporting the community and doing what we can to be a part of that. We are just one small piece of this overall puzzle here in Guelph and in the regions, and kind of recognizing that and owning that and doing our best to give what we do, a piece of what we do back to our community every year in whatever way we can, whether it's financial, whether it's focus, whether it's time. We are always very, very keen and willing to be involved where we can.
Which beer are we going to move to next?
Goldie, the APA is I think next on the docket. So if for those of you that are very familiar with Royal City, we have two other beers that are in that Pale Ale IPA category. One's called Exhibition IPA and one's called Riverside IPA. Those are both named after parks in Guelph, so Exhibition Park and Riverside Park, to stay in that sort of theme. This is named after Goldie Mills Park in Guelph as well. You'll notice the branding on this one's a little bit different than the other ones because we're in a pandemic right now. We aren't selling draft and we aren't selling growlers, and so everything has to go into cans. So when we do one-off beers, they have to go into cans, and this new split label thing is sort of our way of showing that a beer is a one-off. Although this one I think is going to very quickly not be a one-off anymore, and we'll probably go to a core beer relatively soon. So we have Exhibition IPA, which is our session IPA at 4.5%, and then we have our Riverside IPA, which is a hazy IPA at 7%. And so this one we've been talking about for a while that we're missing something around 5% in the nice and hoppy range. So this kind of fit that bill. So nice, bright, again, hop character. There's Mosaic, Galaxy, Vic Secret hops all in here. So you have that sort of fruity berry. I always call it sort of mixed berry jam on the nose, and then that nice tropical fruitiness in the background. Matt, our brewer, and myself, and I think Cam too, do still like, I know it's not as trendy as some other things, but still like a little bit of bitterness in the back of our hazy IPAs. I know Matt thinks so, and I would agree that it keeps it a little bit refreshing. And that's just personal opinion. I know a lot of big fruity IPAs these days have almost no bitterness, and that's okay too. We just find that, that little hit of bitterness at the end does keep everything kind of refreshing and keeps the palate a little bit balanced. So that's looking to be probably, again, a new core beer for us. So let us know if you do like it, because it's selling really well at the brewery. In fact, we had to hold some back for this tasting because it was almost all out the door. So we held some back to make sure that you guys got some, and then it's gone, and it'll be back again, I think next week or the week after.
Next week.
Cam, you want anything to add to that?
No, I think Dan hit it on a nutshell. We just kind of had noticed we had a little spot missing in the lineup, so we wanted to fill it in with this. Maybe this summer we've been talking about this a little bit as well. Just kind of tease something else. Maybe this summer we're talking about putting a mixed 12 pack together with all three of those beers in it. So just kind of keep your eye on our socials for that. If that appeals to you at all, have 4 exhibition, 4 Goldies and 4 Riversides in it. Just depending on what part of the day you're in or what kind of mood you're in, you can either go 7% or go 4.5.
Sometimes it's important to make those distinctions.
It really depends on the day you're having, I think, right?
And this is the year for it.
That's for sure.
What do you guys see that's new and exciting in the industry?
I'll go first if you don't mind, Cam.
Fire away.
I really like, and I think Cam will probably agree with me too, that well-made, traditional-ish lager styles are cool again. Because I've worked in beer for a good amount of time, and I like, there's not a lot of beer that I don't like, and I like big juicy hot bombs, and I like big barrel aged stouts. But when it comes down to it, I really, a lot of the time, want to drink Pilsner or Helles, or Saison for that matter, but easy drinking beers. And the fact that a lot of smaller breweries are putting a lot of time and effort into making good quality European style lager, I can't say enough how excited that makes me, because it's something that I want to drink quite a lot. And, it takes some finesse and some skill to do that. And I'm happy that people are starting to realize that this is something worth pursuing.
Yeah, I would absolutely second that. I had to scramble to think of something different to say. Actually, the one for me is I'll go a different route. Well, I am very keen on lager as well. But say I kind of cut my beer educational teeth living in Germany, in the south of Germany, for a couple of years. So I really like drinking a lot of lager. But one of the things I find really interesting about where things kind of the new trend in the industry is actually that trend towards more control of product for individual brewers, and that online distribution model, that self-distribution model, direct to consumer. I think that's a really, really cool trend. Obviously born out of necessity right now, and I'm really kind of geeked out to hear that you guys are thinking that's something you like and want to keep doing. And the reason being is that brewers such as ourselves, and we are by no means alone in this, we go out of our way to try and make our product as good as it can be. And as soon as it leaves our control and hits the black hole that is the LCBO, we lose all control or all say or all input into how that beer is ultimately handled or treated, or whether it's rotated through inventory or not, or what you wind up with in the shelf when you buy a beer from the LCBO. It's a really big challenge for small brewers like ourselves to make sure that product is going to be something that we're happy to have on the shelf after it's sat warm at an LCBO for 4.5 months because they didn't rotate their product. So having that, and again, that's not every LCBO, because there are some LCBOs where the beer ambassadors there really care about beer and go out of their way to make sure they get the best stuff and keep stuff cold and treat their product well. But then there are a lot that aren't that way. So for me, it's kind of exciting knowing that we have that much more control over when our product gets to the actual consumer. And I think that, you're, as a beer drinker, you're going to notice that a lot of the beer you're getting tastes a lot better than it does when you get it from the LCBO, especially in the IPA realm, that are really that can be really susceptible to mistreatment. So I'm pretty geeked about that. Actually, that's kind of an interesting new direction. I really like the way that's going, and I really hope that continues.
I'm looking at the chat line, and there's a couple of insightful little statements there. Derek makes mentions of, it's nice to avoid I'm going to put it a little bit differently, the LCBO cellaring program of their beers.
Yeah. Stewarding program, more like it, I would say.
Yeah. I call it the aging program, but yeah, it's all the same.
Well, I always joke, and I mean, it's kind of a joke, but on the other hand, it's very serious. So when we do quality testing for all of our products, When we pull beers off the canning line or the bottling line, we put a bunch of them aside and mark them. And myself and our brewer taste all the beer that's packaged 1 week after it's packaged, 1 month after it's packaged, 3 months after it's packaged, 3 months stored warm to mimic the LCBO, and 6 months after it's packaged. And so, brewers know that their product, brewers know that their product isn't always treated the best. And so, we taste that beer when it's going to be you want to say at its worst, but when it's treated the way that it's typically going to get treated, just to see how shelf stability is holding up and things like that. So it is very much a warm aging program that they have going on there at some places, not at all of them. There are some great ones, like Cam said.
That's true. There are some. One other thing to note, Peter was wondering if anyone's ever going to make a lager like Tusker.
Well, I think you'd have to have a brother that got killed by an elephant first or something. If I remember the story.
I got killed by a dead elephant in like 2006. Does that count? I don't know.
I haven't had a Tusker in probably 8 years. I'm gonna go with no. I don't know.
Yeah. Cam, I know that your focus at Royal City when you founded it, you co-founded it, was lots of different styles of beer. But I'm curious, is there any style you haven't done that you wish you had?
Yeah, to be honest. Two, actually. I would really, and again, this is a little out of my hands now because I'm not the guy with the boots on anymore. But I would really like us to nail down a very, very good kind of Landbier style lager, something kind of North Bavaria Franconian style lager. Pull a portion of it as a Keller. That would be kind of my big wish. And for us right now, the reason why we can't do that, other than not being German or being able to decoct our mash tun terribly well, is just capacity and tank space. We just don't have the ability to put beer down as long as it needs to go to do that. But that's a big one that I would like to do. Like a box I'd like to check off one day. And the other one would be I'm really very much like to make a proper and good Kirsch. So that would be the two that I'm kind of thinking of down the line at some point in time. And again, it's mainly just capacity and vessel space. That way we haven't done that yet.
Last time we chatted, Cam, we discussed the influence that Montreal had on you becoming a craft brewer. Where are you getting your inspiration now?
A lot of it's coming from Dan and Matt. I mean, I say I'm not the guy with the boots on anymore. So I kind of live vicariously through those two guys. I mean, Matt's our head brewer now. He makes all of our beer. He has autonomy and control to make whatever he wants, and adjust whatever he wants to the beer. And I know Dan has a big role in that process as well. So the kind of stuff that they're coming up with and the ways they've improved the beers that we have over the years are really good. So I find a lot of inspiration in that. I mean, the big thing that I really like is I like progress. I like getting better. Talking really about staying grounded. It's just like, from my perspective, it's I don't ever want to be in a position with our company, and this is a struggle. We strive with this where we're resting on any laurels that we might have. We're never going to have perfect beer, but we can always try and make it better. And so kind of having that, seeing how Dan and Matt are executing that really on a daily basis, and what they're doing to make our process and our recipes better. I find that really inspiring. I find that exciting because I find out about a lot of this stuff secondhand now. But for me, that's kind of the thing that keeps me interested and geeked out. Definitely, is just seeing what's coming up next.
Dan, you want to talk to me about the Double?
Yes, I do. So I'm gonna grab some as well. Where did I put it? Oh, it's over here. So this is our Double, just called Double.
That by the way, sir, I'm going to jump in for one quick second there. This is probably one of the greatest differences between the Cam and Matt Dan era at the brewery. Is I generally just called beers what they were called by the style, and Dan and Matt are very anti that. To their benefit, to their great credit, they have come out with a lot of much better names for our beer than I ever did. So that is the little throwback to the Cam's last messing up the pot with the last time I was stirring the pot, as it were, on beer naming. But anyway, sorry, carry on. That was a little.
No, and to be honest, I have no problem calling a beer by its style name. I think that sometimes that's preferred. What always struck me funny is when I saw our beer names on beer menus at beer bars, and it would say like Royal City Smoked Honey or Smoked Honey Brown Ale, and then the style would say Smoked Honey Brown Ale, and then like Royal City Double, and then the style would say Double. And so it was always just kind of this funny thing where I was like, this doesn't look good on paper. And so we try to, I would preface this also by saying Matt, our brewer, also doesn't like calling things a style name unless he's very sure that his beer that he's making is as traditional to that style as it can possibly be. So he would rather be more vague and call something just, for example, a dark ale, than try to call it something specific and not be true to that style. And so between the two of us, we have changed some of the way that Royal City names some of their things. On that note, we have Double. So this is brewed relatively traditionally as far as Belgian Doubles go. So it is mostly Pilsner malt. It has Belgian candy sugar in it. So if you're not familiar with that, the Belgians, they have something that they call digestibility in their beer. We would call that sort of like crushability, maybe is a good way to put it. But ease of drinking and sort of mouthfeel has a part of it, and how easily the beer goes down. They like higher alcohol complex beers, but they don't like them to drink necessarily like a Big Russian Imperial Stout. So you'll see a lot of beers like doubles and triples, higher alcohol content, 7, 8, 9% alcohol. But when you drink them, they're almost like dangerously easy drinking. And they achieve this a lot of the time through alternative sources of sugar. So other than grain. So in something like the bootleg before, when I said we use corn in it, corn adds a lot of fermentable sugar to a beer without adding body. So you get quite a light beer. And that's why, a lot of large brewers started using corn in their beers back in the day too, to make very fermentable worts and make beer that was very light to drink. In bootleg or something like that, it makes sense. It makes a light beer that's easy to drink. In a bigger beer, like a Belgian style beer, you still get a big flavorful beer, but you lighten the body a little bit and make it more digestible or drinkable, or however you want to say that. So we use Belgian candy sugar in this as well. And that's a sugar derived from beets. And this is a dark candy sugar. You can get dark or light. And so it does add a little bit of flavor to the beer as well. You do get a little bit of that, almost candy note to it. But it's mostly there to add color and to add fermentable sugar without adding body. In this beer, you also do get that typical Belgian sort of spicy yeast character. But for me, what really comes through in this beer, and what I know Matt really goes for, is that Belgian malt, or that double malt character that's sort of big and robust and has that dried fruit sort of thing going on. So to bump that up a little in the double, when Matt makes it, he puts actual dates right into the beer as well, just to amp up that sort of dried fruit character. So I really like this beer a lot, and it usually comes out in the colder months. It's perfect for sort of curling up, with a book or sitting in front of a fire. We've done a lot of food pairing events with this beer as well, for cheeses and cooking events. I recently did one with a chef that we work with quite often in Guelph named Emily Richards, and she used it to braise some lamb, which ended up being quite delicious as well. So it's a really good food beer. It's great for cooking, and it's nice and robust, and has a lot of that fruit character going on, which I like a lot. Cheers.
Cheers. So Dan, I'll ask you, where do you and Matt get your inspiration now?
Well, again, it's not, I wouldn't say it's me making any sort of those big decisions. That's still up to Matt. I mean, he definitely lets me have some input, and we talk a lot about beer and what kind of stuff we would like to see brewed at the brewery. I would say both of us draw a lot of inspiration from traditional things. We read a lot of the same books about traditional brewing processes, and follow a lot of the same people on social media that talk about whether it's traditional Belgian brewing or what is more trendy lately, the Norwegian farmhouse brewing with Kvike and things like that. We're very much, both of us, I would say, influenced and inspired by process driven things, as opposed to what can we throw in a beer to make it taste cool. It's what did people have to do at one time to make beers taste a certain way, and how did that impact the flavor, and is that something that we can draw inspiration from at the brewery. So Matt, he, like I said, he doesn't like calling things by their necessarily by their style name unless he thinks they're very stylistically appropriate, but is very much inspired by styles of beer that he would like to brew something in the vein of a traditional Norwegian farmhouse beer or a Belgian double or whatever that is. And so the two of us will usually talk about, hey, I read an article on a blog that we both follow about this guy up north in Norway that brews beer with juniper, and this is how they do it, and oh yeah, that's cool, we could do something like that. And it won't ever be what that person is doing, but we're very much inspired by the process and the stories surrounding those traditions.
Did anyone get a chance to get one of our Christmas beers this year, the Longest Night? Or that was just what Dan was speaking right there. That was something Matt's been bugging to do for quite a while. We actually had a 7.5 hour boil on that beer.
I think so.
Which was brewed with juniper as well in the mash. So that he wanted, his idea was to try and make something as close to what that Norwegian farmhouse experience would have been. Which I thought that beer turned out amazingly complex and interesting. It was unlike many beers that I've ever had before. It was really turned out really well. So I imagine we're going to do it again next year because it went pretty well. In case you didn't get a chance to try it this year.
I think if it didn't take a 14-hour brew day, Matt would want to brew that beer every day. But yeah, logistically speaking, yeah.
It was long. It was a long one.
Yeah,
that would definitely make for a long day. 7.5 hour boil. So Dan, who would you say is your role model in brewing?
It's hard to say because I'm not a brewer. But there's lots of people that have brewed or talk about beer that I look up to. I would say one of the big ones for me would be Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewing. His book Brewmaster's Table was definitely one of the sort of cornerstones of my beer education early on, and talking about the traditions of pairing beer and food. And although the pairing stuff is something I still do on a regular basis, it's something I'm less passionate about than the actual story behind where the beers come from and why they were paired with those food and what traditions brought them together. So he's a big influence on me, I would say. So the guy that I did my beer education through, named Roger Mittag, he runs the Prud'homme beer certification. So a lot of my knowledge base came from him early on as well. So I would say, those two people have probably had the most influence on me early on. And as beer writing and information about beer becomes more and more accessible, and there's easier ways to get that information, I find new people all the time that are sort of inspirations to me and that I can look up to as far as the dedication they go to research obscure beer topics that nobody else cares about. And so like I said, those guys would probably be where I started, but there's so many more that are more modern inspirations for me as well. That
Cam, is there anybody that you use as an inspiration?
Is in terms of brewing, way back in the day, or way back when, it was when I was first getting into it. Let me think about it. Yeah, there's a couple of people that I would definitely say that I've come across in my life that I would say that about. I guess first and foremost would be Ralph Morena. I worked at Barvolo in Toronto for a couple of years in the mid 2000s, when Ralph had just basically turned it into an Ontario only thing with a bunch of a very impressive bottle selection from across the border. So kind of seeing how he presented beer and made beer something that people were excited about was really cool for me. I mean, coming out, I knew I was very interested in beer. I had taken a couple of classes at my undergrad about beer at school here, and but seeing that was where the rubber met the road kind of thing, and seeing that this is actually how the place that beer is becoming to get, or starting to get in our society and in our community. That was a pretty cool, pretty formative thing. And, seeing what Ralph has done with Barbolo and with Cask Fest, at our Cask Days rather, is pretty cool to see, and have been in that orbit relatively early on. I mean, Barbolo opened in '85, so it wasn't there that early, I guess, but the original one anyway. So yeah, I would point to that direction. Yeah, and I guess also just kind of being in, I was less so a person rather than a place. I guess I would say when I lived over in Germany, I was in Nuremberg, which is kind of the north of the south, and there was a bar in Nuremberg called Landbier Paradies. Basically, it means what it sounds like, land beer paradise. And in their tables, they had a little sign on each of the tables in the bar. And it wasn't a very big place, but it was it's a pretty popular spot. And they had a sign on the thing that said, there are 500 and some odd, I don't even know what these numbers would be now, but this was early 2000s. There are from like 500 breweries in Germany, and of those, or 1,500 breweries in Germany, and of those, 700 of them are in the area right around Nuremberg. That makes Nuremberg the beer heart of the world. This is me paraphrasing from memory here, so bear with me. And they said that their job was to protect that beer culture. And so to wit, they would bring in, they worked with 150 local breweries to put their beer menu together. And then they had every week one wooden keg, so a cask ale, basically a Keller beer, in wood, that would be on the bar that week. Brewers would wait sometimes 2 and 3 years to get their cask back on the bar in that place. And God, did they sell a lot of beer, and just seeing the culture there and around, and how people interacted with that space. And how proud people were of the fact that they drank at this place. And, there's a thing in Germany where they have a Stammtisch. I mean, Kata people, I'm sure, know what a Stammtisch is. And, there was like a 15-year waiting list at Landbier to get a Stammtisch at Landbier Paradies. So the groups would literally put their name in 15 years in advance and wait till they could have their Tuesday night at 7 o'clock at Landbier around the main table kind of thing. So it was a pretty impressive spot to see. And I guess that kind of definitely also formed how I look at beer and beer culture.
We're getting close to the top of the hour. So I'm going to ask both of you, if you could travel back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
All right. What did I say? Take up distilling? No. No. I guess my biggest thing is don't pay attention to the noise. I guess stick with what we want to do as a stick with what we are trying to achieve as a brewery, and don't pay attention to the stuff happening on the frills. I think that's kind of would be my thing. Just be focused on what you want to do and what you want to achieve. If I had to go back 7 years ago and tell myself something, that's pretty much what it would be. It's not, I wouldn't say a grass always greener thing, but shiny things always get attention, and they're not always the best things to pursue, I would say. And that's not being cryptic or anything. I just think having a clearer focus on what what, or sorry, not like alluding to a specific thing. But I just think that having a clear focus and start setting out to achieve what you want to achieve would be good. That and get more bloody space. I don't know if anyone's ever been in our brewery when we're canning, but it is it's Tetris. It really is. And we don't get any of the 4 long pieces. We just get those little jaggedy ones that
that don't fit anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, more space.
Along those same lines, I mean, I would probably just tell myself to believe that what you're doing is what you should be doing. I think, like I said, I've been in beer for a long time, and there's been some times along the road where I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. Where lots of people ask you what you're doing with your life. What do you mean you still work in a bar? And to this day, it was still probably the right thing to do the whole time. Don't let other people tell you that what you're doing is not the right thing. So that's what I would tell me, young me.
Yeah. I was just thinking what my mom said when I told her I was working in a bar. Cam, on behalf of everybody that's tuned in tonight, I want to say thank you for sharing with us this evening your stories. I truly appreciate the time that you have given to us. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for having us back on. It's always great to get to see some folks, get to talk to people, especially now, because I say all I do is just go home and look at my dogs sleeping on the couch in my seat. So it's nice to have something else to look at tonight for a change. So thanks, guys, and thank you very much for the opportunity again, Bill. Much appreciated.
Agreed. Thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.